So what can happen when you get in a household scenario like this, especially just in this early stage, it's going to look different in the next 10 days. But right now, we've got a crisis, and you're going to find people wanting to deal with this crisis in all sorts of different ways. So if we look on a spectrum, you'll have people sort of in the middle, and they're appropriately concerned. And then you have them fanning out from there. And some are going to be really relaxed about it, like no big deal, to almost reckless. And then you'll have people on the other hand of appropriately concerned to like very vigilant to almost paranoid. And what can happen is you've got people living in the house and they're somewhere different on this spectrum. And what can happen is they start to get into a power struggle. And if you're a more vigilant person paired up with someone who's a little more loose on this, the tensions around that can be really, really tight. Tensions around whether or not you have contact in the outside world, that can cause a lot of tension between people. Tension about how to use resources. Do we really conserve right now? Are we generous? Do we stockpile a ton of stuff? Are you overthinking it because there'll be eggs later? You know, people start to really go after each other, and they get stressed because, again, like we said earlier, everybody's adrenaline is flowing. Everybody's stressed, and we all have default for where we go with that. So it's just ripe for problems. So one of the things you want to do is maybe sit down as a household, as the parents specifically, and go, we really need to figure out what our priorities and our goals are during this time. It sounds like such a weird thing to say, but what is most important to us while we deal with this scenario? And find out, where do the finances fit for you? Where does social interaction, even if it's all virtual, fit for you? Where does stockpiling food fit for you? Where does emotional tone in the house fit for you? It's really important for a couple to sit down, or people dealing with each other, to go, where are we prioritizing things? And I think once you get some of that out on paper and you get that sorted out, you start seeing things come together. I remember, this is years ago, working with some people that were entering into a very tense situation, and their children were going to be involved. And long story short, it was tough. And we sat down and we talked about, well, what's your priority? And I said, go away, talk about everything that's going to happen. What are your top priorities? And they came back and they said, our top priority, in the midst of all this horrendous stuff that we're about to face, we want our children to have good memories. That was their top priority. So from there, everything else fell in line underneath that priority. So if you figure out what's most important in the next couple of weeks as a household and as parents specifically, and then life starts to revolve around that, you can get on the same page. And rather than this being a power struggle of which one of us is going to win, it's combined effort with the differences in your temperaments to say, together, we're going to figure out how to make the best of a really difficult situation, so that we don't fall apart, our kids don't fall apart, and we don't have damage done because of how we handled this. So you want to really get clear. What do you want to prioritize? Where do you want to put your energy? And get really, really good communication around those issues. If you have a scenario where a couple has the same tendency toward maybe real vigilance or really relaxed mode, the challenge will be, between the two of them, they will probably be quite happy because they're going to be on the same page. But what they might find is, on a broader social network, they end up with more tension than they expect, because the people around them perceive them as being somehow dangerous to the community, either because you've taken more resources than you need, and because you've removed all those resources from others to have access from them, we now don't see you as playing your part in the community effort. Or you're so loosey-goosey that you're kind of willing to expose all of us to these illnesses. And so sometimes that the buffer between two people is in the relationship in the household, where the extremes sort of pull each other toward the middle and they get healthy. Sometimes the buffer is, if you're leaning too far in one direction as a household, is you're going to want to try to open your eyes and ears to some of the appropriate feedback from the community about behaviors that might not actually be good for the well-being of everybody. So we're not asking anybody to not care for themselves. Follow all the guidelines. Do good hand washing, social distancing, get enough resources, have an emergency fund, have emergency food, etc. But there can be a point where you've taken that too far, or you've been too lackadaisical about it, and you're now creating problems for other people. And so you're just going to want to listen to that feedback and make adjustments if you can.